Grand Rising.
When it's you are more dangerous sober than you are drunk. He's not worried about no dancing, singing, clowning Negro. He's worried about you when you stop dancing, when you stop singing, when you stop clowning and start thinking. Then he gets worried. And you should keep him worried.
And I will keep him worried. The other nations, you should be very worried now because we are not listening to anything you have to say, even though you're not saying much at all anymore. Check this out. Ceremonies and customs. All right. We're going to talk about who the Inquisition, who the Spaniards were going over or going after. Anciently, the Inquisition used to judge of these 6 kinds of persons. But within these, 100 years, Gregory the VIII, Pius the V, Clement the VIII, and Gregory the XIV have enlarged its jurisdiction and extended it to all Jews and Mahatmans or Moors. All right, that's who they were going after: Moors and Jews, black people, not Arabs, so-called black people. So when you look at books like this and you see what happens here, says when the Spaniards first arrived, they were astounded to find that Muslims, because that's what they tried to change Moors to just being Muslims, but not Moors. Spain's traditional enemies inhabited large parts of the Philippines archipelago. The Spaniards' deep-seated animosity towards Muslims, Moros, was harbored during the centuries-long Reconquista in the Iberian Peninsula. Now, these Moros are Moors, right? At the time of the contact, Spaniards had only recently taken over the Emirate of Granada in 1492, the last Muslim stronghold. The Spanish colonists even pretty much said that they were the ones, the direct descendants of the Muslims who had been banished from Spain. But see, right here, they went from 1492 and they had to make up a whole different history to include these so-called white Jews and what was going on to them. And they just hid all the information about them finding these Moors in the Philippines. Check this out from this book, The Negroes and the Jews. Right here, the problem that Baldwin presented and with which Rosenwald identified was the question of deporting Negroes. That's what they wanted to do here in America. This was a frightening thought to a newly established Jew who in one generation made the leap from peddler's son to American aristocrat. Now you were able to do that because it talked about in Deuteronomy 28 in the 40s how the strangers were going to get up above you. Look it up in Deuteronomy 28. Look around the 43rd verse. How these strangers are going to get above you. And this guy just says, in one generation they went from being peddlers to being American aristocrat. All right. So that doesn't fit them. It fits us. Such a solution for any minority group was too reminiscent of the long nightmare of Jewish expulsion in Europe. See, they want to make it sound like it was them. So we're going to make up all this stuff. Watch. Okay? Rosenwald could not help but be aware of the millennial history of the Jews in Europe, chased first from England in 1290. Our people were there too. Right? Next from Spain in 1492, right? And then he went and found them in the Philippines. Is that what he's talking about right here? No, I don't think so. They could probably something totally different, right? So the guy kicked out in 1492. And then all across the 200 German-speaking duchies right here, principalities and kingdoms that comprised the Holy Roman Empire in the 16th and 17th and 18th centuries, the Jews had ended up bankrupt and humiliated in the prison confines of autocratic Tsarist Russia. So supposedly the Holy Roman Empire was chasing them all over Europe, but they were actually fighting the real Jews, the real Israelites, as well as the Moors in the Philippines. And like, look, here's that, like they talk about the Moors were getting kicked out, but the Jews, they were chasing after the Jews. Yes, they were chasing after the Jews and the Moors because they were the same people. But let's take a quick definition. Let's look at a quick definition from the 1700s of what a Moor is. From the dictionary right here, from 1781, right, from Johnson Dictionary right here, right? Moor, look at the number 2, a Negro, a blackamoor. So unless Ish all of a sudden looks just like we do, then it wasn't talking about the same people. You guys had to make a whole different history about them being persecuted over there in Europe when you were guys actually persecuting the Moors and the Israelites over here in the Philippines, which because you're trying to hide that whole Pacific slave trade. So you got to make up a whole persecution up in Europe, and you're going to ignore the persecution of the Israelites and the Moors in the Philippines, right? And Ophir, and how you're enslaving them and bringing them over here. You know, two groups of people, one group gets to be a vassal, the other one gets to be a foreigner, and you want to hide all that. So therefore, you only talk about them getting, being persecuted by the Romans and whatever else in Europe. And it's kind of ironic that the next Moor right there, to Moor, right, is to fasten by anchors or otherwise. So again, with ships, you're fastening them down to ships, right? And you're bringing them over here on the Pacific slave trade, which you called a just war because they were Muslims. So where's all this history right here? Again, the Spaniards' deep-seated animosity towards Muslims, Moors, Negroes, black people, right, was harbored during the centuries-long Reconquista in the Iberian Peninsula. But at the time of contact, Spaniards had only recently taken the Emirate of Granada, 1492, the last Muslim stronghold. Spanish colonists even posited that they were the ones, the descendants of the ones that were kicked out in 1492, right? Muslims that were banished in Spain. So if you read on down, you can look at the bottom, right? The Reconquista lasted from the... You guys want to hide the fact, right? The Reconquista lasted from the 8th through the 15th century, 700 years, when we were in charge, right? When the Catholic kings expelled the last Muslim rulers from Granada. So this is why when they got here, they let the Indios go, the fake Indians go and become vassals, but they were after the Israelites, the so-called black people. They called us foreigners, right? This is why, because they were always set up to go against the Jews and the Mohammedans or the Moors. That was their mortal enemy all the way until today. This is why it's so important for them to continue with sacraments. As a sacramental rite, the ceremony marked a person as being a member of the Christian community. See, they never gave us that opportunity because we were Jews and Moors, the slaves, right? It incorporated individuals into the Christian body and made them subject to the laws of the church. That's why they don't question anything the churches say, right? They can't. During the course of the 16th century, baptism came to have a different political meaning for Indians than for slaves. Slaves, again, were Jews and Moors. That's why we didn't get acceptance, right? Right? So Jews and Moors. During the course of the 16th century, baptism came to have a different political meaning for Indians than for slaves based on civil law. Indians were a colonized people, so baptism was a political tool, right, that incorporated them into the government as vassals. Slaves, on the other hand, were from foreign lands. We were Israelites, right? They were non-Christian outsiders who were baptized to save their soul, but the sacrament did not change their legal status and certainly did not impart freedom. Why is that? They're telling you right here why. Because that's when the Inquisition got control of us. Everything about us went under the Inquisition. So right here, extended it to all Jews and infidels, okay, of what religion forever. So if you look at the next paragraph, these cases, which are subject to the Inquisition, are the greater extent, all right, the might as first to be imagined. So we fell under the jurisdiction of the Inquisition, of the Inquisitors. And that's exactly what they say happened with the slaves. So the information I was getting from the other stuff was from this book. So right here, in the middle, baptism had a different significance for Indians than for slaves, which reflected the complex relationship between the church and the Spanish crown, and canon versus civil law. We went under the Inquisitors. But this is what they want. That's why they want you to be laughing and having a great old time and not thinking and not reading. Those people are not the problem. They are not the threat. The ones that read and have the Holy Spirit, they are the threat. So the ones that have been bragging about, I got a 3rd grade education, I don't read, I don't do this, I don't do that, that's what they want. That's how they want us, to not read and to not study. They are not the threat. These
You are more dangerous sober than you are drunk. He's not worried about no dancing, singing, clowning Negro. He's worried about you when you stop dancing, when you stop singing, when you stop clowning and start thinking. Then
I will keep you worried. Shalom.